My dream was to become a writer, to create worlds and characters and stories that come from my imagination and that I can share with other people. And I don't know if it was the creative aspect of the whole thing or if it was just like a control thing. I could create these people, sort of this God complex that I can create these people, create these worlds, and have complete control over everything that happens. But I envisioned sitting alone and creating these stories that readers would love. I never envisioned having to do book signings and creating content for readers and writers or anything like that. All I thought about was writing. So there were two problems with that thought. First of all, the writer does not really control anything. The writer creates a story, creates the characters, but then the characters kind of take over. The plot is really driven by the needs of the character. Whatever the character needs in order to reach their goal, that's how the writer is going to write the plot. So rather, instead of, I should say, of the author controlling everything and moving these characters around like little pieces of Legos or something, the writer basically transcribes what needs to happen. So there's no controlling of anything other than just creating the original plot. But from there, it's really the plot is determined on what the character needs, what the character wants, and how to get the character to go through the transformative journey to reach the end of the book. And my second error in thinking here was that the writer can just sit alone with their stories and write, that the writer doesn't have to do anything else. So of course, that is not true. That if you are a writer, especially a published writer, a writer that wants to become a published writer, your job is not just to write the book, but your job is also to be involved in all aspects of the marketing and promotion of your story, and that includes being able to create some type of content that is going to support maybe your writing career. So today we're going to talk about that extra that the writer needs to do, which is to create content for readers.
You have a story to tell, but you don't know where to start. Let me show you how to free your story. I teach you how to write and how to dig deep in your soul to release your story and make a difference in the world.
Welcome to the Julia Amante channel. If we're just meeting, I am Julia Amante. I'm a women's fiction author and here to give you some writing tips on Fridays. So let's talk then about the content that the writer must create. First of all, let me say that I wasn't that far off when I was a kid, right? So I thought that all writers had to do was to write. They really didn't have to do as much content creation as we do today. This is sort of a new thing for writers. In the past, writers really could just focus on writing. Publishers, there were a lot more publishers than there are today. Also, the publishers took care of a lot of the things that they don't take care of today. So a lot of the promotion, a lot of the setting up of book signings, a lot of the things that a writer dreams of is not really a thing anymore where it used to be in the past. So in the old days, the writer, the agent would pretty much handle and manage the writer's career, and the writer didn't have to do that. Whereas today, the writer does have to do that, and it does involve content creation as part of that marketing aspect of the writer's career. So what does today's writer need to produce? They obviously need to produce the content of their book that they're writing, but they also need to produce other content that supports the book. So that might include social media comments, social media plugs for the book, social media comments about the book, but that's not the only thing. They might also have to create other content, maybe blogs, maybe articles that they try to sell all around the same idea or theme. They might have to write newsletters to their readers. They might have to write emails. So there's a lot of extra writing that the writer has to do today that they didn't have to do in the past. So what is the purpose of all this content? Why do we want to create it? And do we want to? Do we want to spend the time, instead of writing our next book, of creating all this content that obviously steals time, right? So when I take all the time to do all these other things, I'm not writing. I'm not writing my next book. So your time gets used up. So let's say you only have 2 or 3 hours for your writing time. If you're spending it writing extra content, then when do you write your next book? So it is a problem. And do we need to write as much content or create as much content as we think we do, or as much content as people tell us we need to create? So should we create content, and what kind of content should we create? So first of all, I think that there's too much out there. There's too much useless, repetitive, unhelpful content out there that really doesn't need to be there. So if you don't want to do that, you don't want to add extra stuff that is unimportant. So creating content just to create content, to me, is a waste of your time and a waste of the reader's time out there in the internet world, right? So what kind of content then should you create? You should create some, because you want to connect with your readers. You also want to interact with your readers. So I think some social media content is a necessity. It doesn't mean posting all the time. It doesn't mean posting about your dogs, unless you want to, because I like to, or posting about your meal that you had, or all these other things that people feel they have to constantly post about. You don't have to do that much, but you do want to connect and interact with your readers, because that keeps you active, right, in their mind. You can talk about your next book that's coming out, or your first book that's coming out, and that helps to engage your readership and to keep them interested in what you're doing. You also want to probably have some type of newsletter or some type of email system to connect with your readers personally, because you don't want to rely just on social media. First of all, not everybody on your social media account, friends or whatever we want to call them, followers, not all of them are seeing your post. Where if you write a newsletter or an email that goes directly to them, then it's more likely that they are going to see that. So you do want to have something like that, where you can have a direct connection with your readers. So being able to have communication with your readers, connect with them, have some type of interaction with them, that type of content is good. But writing a bunch of useless content about things that are random, that do not relate to your book at all, or to you or your life, is probably not worth your time. So let's talk about the benefits of creating content. So we agree, hopefully, that there's some extra content you do have to create, but you don't have to do any of the useless one. You also don't have to do like every social media accounts out there, right? You can just choose one or two that you feel where you feel your readers are, and then stick to that. So the first benefit is actually that connection to your audience, and also maybe to expand your audience. It helps you to connect with the readers that you currently have, and hopefully maybe reach a new audience that you don't have. And so we do this in a variety of ways. First of all, by providing some information or something that's useful to our readers. Like your books, like here, you can find my books here. You can support me by reading this chapter. There's some information or some content that's useful to them and that's helpful to you. Other types of things can be fun things. It doesn't mean that you never post about your meals or your dogs. I do post about my animals, my little chihuahuas, because why? Because I actually love my chihuahuas. It's actually fun for me. There are people out there that are also dog lovers. And so it helps to interact and create something in common with my readers, right? So you do want to have maybe some types of fun posts that are not always about your books, but building that connection, building and growing your audience and your readership, that's one benefit of creating this extra content, especially in that social media world. Okay, the second benefit of creating extra content is that it helps to build your brand as an author. So whatever you're writing, let's say you do decide to write an article for a magazine, and it's related to the same topic, it's on the same topic as the book that you wrote, then it could be useful because it helps whoever reads this extra content who might not know about your book or read your book, it helps to kind of brand you as someone who knows something about that topic. It doesn't have to be like for fiction authors. It doesn't have to be like a how-to or anything like that. It doesn't have to be that type of stuff. But if you wrote a mystery, then you about whatever, right? I don't know. That's maybe set, let's say, in Los Angeles. Then you might write an article about some cool things to do in Los Angeles, and then share that maybe you did a little research, or you went to Los Angeles and you had a good time like researching your book and you visited these places. So you can tie it in somehow, right? You can find a way to tie it in. But what the thing is the person gets to know, the readers get to know who you are. They get to know some of the topics that you're interested in. They might get to know a little bit about your voice, and get to know you as an author. And it creates that brand. Maybe all your mysteries are set in Los Angeles. So you, again, are branded as a mystery writer of stories that are set in Los Angeles. So that's a second benefit, I think, to creating extra content that is also helpful to you as the writer. Also, creating extra content, another benefit is that it opens up other opportunities, maybe for collaborations with other writers, maybe with other opportunities, speaking engagements that somebody may want to book you for because of content that you shared on social media or articles that you wrote somewhere. So it can lead to other little side ventures that maybe you weren't even expecting that could be profitable. So even if you're not making money on your book, let's say, you could make money on some of these speaking engagements or other things that other opportunities that come up. And that fourth benefit actually could be that money, right? So that you make extra money doing other things. So even if your books aren't selling very well, or maybe they're not even published yet, but you might publish an article on that topic and you can get a little bit of extra money. I write for Medium. I don't make a lot of money, but I do get a little of extra money by writing blogs for Medium, writing articles there. So some of these extra activities, extra writing activities, content creation, can help you maybe to earn a little bit of money to continue to follow your writing dream. And I think another kind of cool thing about having to create all this extra content is that it helps me, at least, and probably other writers, to expand your skills as a writer and your creativity. So when you're writing something different, so when I am writing my novel, I'm using certain skills to create a story, right? Things that I know how to do as a writer. When I'm creating a video, it's a completely different type of skill. And didn't know anything about it at first. I still have so much to learn about creating videos and making them interesting, and I just haven't had the time to do it because it's not my first priority. This is just something extra that I do for fun and to help other writers. But if I wanted to, right, if I wanted to have I don't know, a show, right, a Julia Amante show where I'm doing a lot more, I would have to put a lot more effort into learning more about creating videos, and and it would open up new skills. Maybe I'd have to learn a little bit more about speaking to a camera, which was very hard for me to do. I'm still learning that too. So I'm still learning a lot about this, but what I'm trying to say is that it's different skills that I'm learning, and it's helping me grow as a person who really is an introvert and prefers to stay behind the camera, writing, not in front of the camera. But it's awesome because it helps me to grow. It helps me to learn new things. When I'm writing blogs, it's a different type of writing than when I'm creating a fiction novel. So again, it's a different type of creativity. It's a different type of skill that I'm learning, and it helps me to become a better person. So even though no writer really wants to create a bunch of extra content, in a way it's really good because it helps authors stretch a little bit and to learn new and different ways that you might even be able to apply to the fiction writing that you're doing or the nonfiction writing that you do, whatever it is that your real content is, then this helps with that. Okay, so one thing that I do think that writers need to learn how to do, though, is to balance that extraneous content that you're creating with your main job, right? Your main writing goal, because you are a writer first. You're a book author first. That's what you're writing. That's what your interest is, right? So you want to balance it. You don't want to spend all your time creating content, other content, and then not have time to write your book. So balance is super important. Maybe saying, depending on the time. So there may be times when you're actually creating more content because you have a book coming out, you've just finished your book, so you're not actually writing your book. Then it may be time to do a lot of the other things that help to promote your book. So that is something that is good to keep in mind, right? It's not going to be a 50-50 balance, but it is going to, there should be some type of balance. There may be times when you're going to spend more time with your novel, with your book, and other times where you're going to spend more time with your other content. But it should be a balance, and your main writing goal, your main book creation, that is your priority. So that should always come first. For example, when I finished writing Let Us Begin, I started I was already doing content creation, but I punched it up. Okay. So instead of doing just some content creation, spending most of my time, let's say 70% of my time writing and only 30% of my time on Facebook posts and Medium articles and other things, as I finished Let Us Begin, and it was in its production stage to get published, I probably spent 90% of my time, or even 100% of my time, doing other content in order to prepare for the release of my book. I would still do some of the not so much writing because the book was done, but editing and other things. But most of the time I was creating other content. So then it might move from 80%, 20% to 50-50 eventually. And then once the book has been out a while and I've started a new story, then it might be turned around. Then I might be going back to spending 80-70% of my time writing, and then the other percent of my time doing some social media content or articles or YouTube videos or other things like that. The other important thing is that you want to not only balance but align your other content with your main project. So like I mentioned, if you are writing mysteries set in Los Angeles, it's okay to write an article about great places to visit in Los Angeles, great food to eat or something like that in Los Angeles. That makes sense. It aligns with your main project. You don't want a bunch of other content, extraneous content that makes absolutely no sense, that doesn't connect with you, that doesn't brand you as a writer of that topic. So having, for example, a beautiful banner for your YouTube channel, for your Facebook page, whatever, right? It's wonderful. Everybody wants to have a beautiful banner. Everybody wants to have all this stuff. Is it worth your time? Probably not. So if you have extra time, perfect. Otherwise, don't spend time on that. Spend time on thinking of some cool things to do, cool things to say on your social media pages that connect with your project, with your writing. And if you can do that, then that's definitely worth your time, because you are branding yourself, you're creating content that's interesting to the reader, you're connecting with your audience, maybe you're growing your audience, you're doing all the things that you want to do. At the same time, you're creating extra content that matches or aligns with your project, with your actual book. So even though creating all this extra content was probably not what you signed up for when you wanted to become a writer, when you thought, I'm going to write a story, it is definitely part of being a writer. It's part of being a selling published author. Even if you are not yet there, you want to start building that audience. You want to start creating all this content, again, that's going to relate to your project. Not useless stuff, not wasting your time, not creating tons of it if you don't have the time to do it. If you do have the time, perfect. But it's not about creating like volume, a lot of stuff. It's about creating cool stuff that's interesting to your readership, that can help you grow as a writer. So I hope that this helps you. I hope that it gives you something to think about, that, a lot of times when we think of being a writer, we don't think about doing this at all. We don't want to. I definitely didn't think this, over 25 years ago when I started. And it wasn't even a thing 25 years ago when I started. there were other things that writers were doing, but not as much as today. And so I've had to learn how to bring that in and accept it, because it is a reality in today's world for writers, that you have to not only write your story and write a great story, but you also have to be able to entertain your readers in other ways out there. So kind of spreading your author tentacles out there in different directions, so that you are branding yourself, reaching your audience, keeping them entertained, and you hopefully growing as a writer. I hope this helped. If it did, please hit the like and the share button, and comment. Maybe you have some really great ideas on how to share content, and I'm open to hearing that myself. So share that with me. All right. Have a great week. I'll see you next week.